When we adapt things, we adjust or modify them to fit new circumstances or requirements or conditions in our lives. Adaptability, it's about having both the flexibility and the ability to change, or indeed to allow yourself to be changed to fit those circumstances. Now, I'm yet to meet anyone who would disagree that adaptability and change are partnered. And personally, I go so far as to say that adaptability is a life process. Now, some might call it fundamental law or a universal law. Whatever the terminology, though, it's as necessary to sustaining human life as air and water are. I'm often asked, what do I mean by that? Well, every second of every hour of every week of every year, our bodies are adapting and changing, and they must. If they didn't, life would cease to exist. And yet life in its mortal form ceases anyway as a result of change. And once dead, our body continues until our energy changes into a new form and so on. But as Henry Louis Mencken said, change is not progress. And that, I believe, is where many people, especially entrepreneurs, where they come undone. For entrepreneurs, they're open to change to a point of exhaustion. You know, they see that bright light, they run after it. They'll change direction on a dime. And I suggest that this is simply change and not adaptability. Adaptability is always values-based. And whilst I'm the first to admit that even values can and do change throughout one's life, when you meet a situation for the first time that requires you to adapt in some way, your line in the sand should always be your values. Now, when we adapt our way of doing things, in the beginning it can be uncomfortable, and through looking at something from someone else's viewpoint or being prepared to change your routine, we learn something new about ourselves and may decide this is where we want to be. We redefine our comfort zones. Now, a lot of people think of comfort zones as the encapsulation of all those bad habits that we should break, but I think comfort zones are a positive thing. They're where we excel, when and where we are in the zone, as people say. So yes, adapting redefines what we are prepared to accept and feel comfortable with, but it also redefines what we're really good at. As we uncover, expand, evolve our talents, the things we are absolutely phenomenal at, they become redefined. That is part of adaptability. Let's talk about what impacts our adaptability. Mostly it's a question of what are our priorities and what are our influences. Yes, programming, conditioning, subconscious mind, all these things, they all play a part. But these are the things that are affected by adapting rather than initiating our need to adapt. There are three main areas of influences and priorities. The first is external. Things like, what will my friends think if I do this? Or, this person is really important to me and she wants me to come to a breakfast meeting at 7:30, but usually I'm just out of the shower at that time. Or, my customer would like me to add a silver lining to my widgets and then he'll order a container of them a month for 3 years. But traditionally, we only do grey enamel lining. Then there are the internal influences and priorities. For example, my family wants me to go skiing with them, but I hate the cold and prefer to travel to warmer climates on holidays. Or my boss asked me to attend a company dinner with her, and I really want that promotion, and I really want to be a team player, but what will my wife say because it's our wedding anniversary? Or my colleagues, they're relying on me to complete my project 2 weeks early, but to do so, I'll have to cut corners. And I pride myself on my care and attention to detail. And then there's the third and final area, restructure. Now this can mean both in terms of yourself or your company. So how do you consciously restructure yourself? I'm sure you've heard people say things like, this is how I've always done things, this is how I've always been, it suits me, why should I change? Well, remember at this point that life is about change, it's about changing and adapting to situations. Or in a company scenario, you might have heard something like, until 3 years ago, our company had steady growth for 2 decades, it must be the economy. Well, if that's your company, then you probably want to rethink your strategy about now. Now, in each of these scenarios, it's your values that anchor you. They are your rock in place on which you stand on your journey. And your decisions as to whether and how to adapt should always be based on them. If not, you're not adapting. You're being changed by some external influence based on their priorities. You are simply one of their options. Most people will tune into the same radio station, WIIFM, what's in it for me. But my good friend and mentor Ian Berry, the leader of the Difference Makers community and Changing What's Normal, he talks about what's in me for you. Adaptability in any of those three areas we just talked about and what's in me for you, they're intrinsically linked. And that's fine, because the ability to look internally and ask the question, what's in me for you, has very solid grounding in a strong values base. There are two key areas to adaptability. They're flexibility and ability. Flexibility is all about attitude. Ability is all about your aptitude. I believe most people will be familiar with what Zig Ziglar said about these two things, namely that attitude, not aptitude, determines your altitude. This is so true with regard to being able to adapt in your personal life or in your business. I'd like you to consider this. Apart from air or gaseous substances, water is possibly the most adaptable matter on the planet. It'll always choose the path of least resistance, and in doing that, it'll forge out new courses. Now, I once met this person in Munich, Germany, who suggested to me, with the water analogy, whilst it's very zen and very creative, strict application in personal and business lives of we humans is a little naive and tantamount to surrendering oneself to everyone who wants a piece of you, and that you're effectively a victim. For me, adaptability is not a submissive reaction by someone with a victim mentality. For me, it's a constructive choice. Just like the water flowing over centuries, it carves out great and amazing, even beautiful, breathtaking structures. It takes a little way from here, it transports it somewhere else, where it contributes what it's taken back into the mix. And in the end, we humans are left in awe of what this most basic matter, water, of what it's created. Imagine if that by adapting, not being so rigid in your ways, taking decisions to consider alternatives, other options, other opinions, ways of doing things, beliefs and practices, yet still based on your core values, imagine what amazing things you could create and leave behind as a legacy. And a legacy doesn't need to be the final thing on your bucket list. A legacy is essentially just a milestone along the journey of your life where your actions have a significant impact and create something that others can take and continue or dismantle and synergize for a bunch of things that are even better, creating multiple ripple effects. Imagine what you can achieve through embracing adaptability in your personal and business lives. In finishing up, I'd just like to leave you with a couple of quotes that I especially love from two people who are unquestionably among some of the most inspiring people of the modern era. From Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world. And from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, open your arms to change, but don't let go of your values.